supposed to be in style now.
My big boy pants.
You got to see this guy. I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
She could come to the party tomorrow and read Gwen's lips for me.
She's not a novelty act, George.
I hope you rent the office.
All right.
Oh.
You can say blind, Spencer. It's okay.
Are you blind?
Find the half-wits.
You can see that they are less perfect than you.
You're not normal.
You're not normal.
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 They're pretty sure.
Normal.
Just
Normal.
According to the 2010 census, there are nearly 300 million people in the United States. 56.7 million of them, or 19% of the population, have a disability. That means 1 in 5 people in the United States have a physical or mental disability. The census shows that about 8.1 million people had difficulty seeing, including 2 million people who were blind or unable to see. 7.6 million people experienced difficulty hearing, including 1.1 million whose difficulty was severe. 7 million adults reported feeling depression or anxiety that interfered with their lives regularly. And about 30.6 million people had difficulty walking or climbing stairs, resulting in the use of a wheelchair, cane, or other assistance. The way we talk about people with disabilities is very important. Most insults have their roots in words that identify marginalized groups. This means that when someone thinks less of an individual, they transform a piece of their identity into something negative, simply because they think that person is worth less. So let's see where the evolution of language began. In the 1840s, the words idiot, imbecile, and moron were actually medical terms for people with developmental disabilities, with idiot indicating the most severe disability. By the 1940s, language began to change. People began using phrases like mentally retarded and mentally handicapped. People were also categorized based on what was considered their level of potential. Educable people were deemed fit to be taught reading and writing. Trainable meant that they could benefit from basic life skills, such as dressing and hygiene. Custodial people generally had very limited developmental opportunities. In the 1960s, these words changed again to mildly, moderately, and severely mentally retarded. By the end of the 60s, society started to attach a level of stigma to the term mentally retarded, and in the following decade, people labeled as such began to speak out about the misuse and inappropriateness of the current language. The changing of this language over time simultaneously reflected and enabled the shift away from the out-of-sight, out-of-mind way of thinking. This mindset is what kept people with disabilities behind institution doors and prevented them from speaking out against their oppression. In the 1980s, this began to change with the Discrimination Diaries campaign. This national movement encouraged people with disabilities to document daily instances of inaccessibility and discrimination. These diaries, which included 5,000 stories, played an important role in the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, because it brought public attention to the struggles of the disabled community. Today, language continues to evolve. Intellectual disability and developmental disability are commonly used, though there are movements to change the way we phrase things. The People First movement advocates for focusing on the person first and the disability second. For example, instead of disabled people, you would say people with disabilities. This movement is still in its infancy, and there are many complex facets to language. Everyone has their own preferences about the terms they are comfortable with. In any case, language will surely continue to progress as society's attitude toward the disabled community changes.
Okay, hi. My name is Jana, and my last name is Glassmeyer. This is my name sign. I was born deaf, and my parents actually didn't know that I was born deaf. The reason is because I was adopted. So maybe 18 months after my adoption, my grandfather was observing that I wasn't quite responding to sound the way a typical child would. So they brought me to the doctor, who said that I was deaf. My parents were very upset. The doctor said, "Do not let her sign. We can fit her with hearing aids and give her speech lessons." I remember going to school. I had a therapist who forced me to practice speech and practice sounds and lip reading. We had to try to speak. Jeff is the oldest, which made us sound very different. And kids would make fun of us thinking we're stupid because we sounded different. And when I had children, I really wanted to communicate with them. And so I have 3 children. They're all CODAs, children of deaf adults. They can sign very well and understand sign language. They're not experts, despite the fact that I'm deaf. I still catch them no matter what. They can't fool their mom. I will say that American Sign Language is really important to me. And that's where I really found my deaf identity. I felt like I kind of came into my deafness. It just makes me feel normal and centered in who I am, because I can express myself and fully understand in American Sign Language. It's my choice to speak or have a hearing aid, or not, and to just use sign language, and people can accept me for exactly who I am. I'm a deaf woman.
My name is Jody Hambright, and I'm 23 years old. I have a degenerative retinal eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa. Because of my eye condition, I need a lot of extra light. Like I said, I have a hard time seeing in dark, dimly lit places or at night. So really having a lot of extra light is the primary thing for me. But and it's kind of hard because I don't know what somebody with 20/20 vision sees. So to me, a lot of times I'm like, oh, I see perfectly fine. I can see fine, but it's really not like that. I was first diagnosed when I was 3 years old, so it's kind of hard for me to remember back that far. But I know that my parents definitely it was a struggle at first to kind of to figure it out. Kind of why was I tripping over the dog all the time, and kind of recognition of people just didn't seem there, eye contact. So they figured it out when I at a pretty early age. I mean, I grew up like a regular kid. I went to public elementary school, public high school, and I like to read. I like to swim, a lot of Netflix binging. I like to eat food. Just your regular classic Homo sapien activities.
Well, regarding employment, it is difficult for me to find a job and find a job that fits my qualifications, and finding someone who can actually look past my ears.
I didn't work all through high school and college. I think school was really demanding for me, and I do think that a big part of that was because of my disabilities. So I got a job in a candy shop at the end of the summer this year, and when I got the job offer, I told them that I have a visual disability. But then my second day I went in, and my manager pulled me aside, and we had a little talk about it and kind of bounced around some ideas of accommodations and what we could do, and she told me that, she said, this is really something that we would have wanted to know in the interview. And I told her really graciously that, I had thought really long and hard about it, but that I decided not to because I legally don't have to. I felt like I was doing a good job, and I think more importantly, I was being told that I was doing a good job. I was let go from my job, and the reasoning behind it was related to my disability and related to the fact that they didn't think that I was going to be able to perform the job duties, and that it was going to present allergy risks to the customers. It was heartbreaking, and it was totally devastating because I thought I was doing a good job, and I knew that they had discriminated against me because I have a disability, and that I wasn't given the opportunity to ask for accommodations that I needed, or I was under a false impression that I was being openly communicated with about it, and I wasn't. I think that people with disabilities just get dismissed a lot of the time, and I think that that's just unacceptable. And, I think that, people with disabilities have a ton to offer the world and a ton of insight to offer. And I think that, just to have people who are willing to listen and really willing to be there and be supportive of that is really important.
So welcome to Blue Star Recyclers. Blue Star Recyclers is a nonprofit organization that recycles electronics as a way to create local jobs for people with disabilities. Well, Blue Star Recyclers is an idea that came to the surface about 7 years ago when I sort of accidentally discovered a group of people with autism and other disabilities that are very good at the kind of tasks that are needed in recycling. Well, they are the best employees I've ever had. I've been leading teams for about 35 years, and this is the best group I've ever seen. So this is our team. Ben and Jack and Ian and Philip are on the line today.
It's great. A lot of times it's like a middle school boys' locker room. I mean, we try and, have fun when we're working. It seems like the more fun we have, the higher the production goes. But at the end of the day, I just treat the guys like human beings.
When we started this, all we knew was they had aptitude for the tasks that we require of them. What we didn't know was 6 years later, we were going to have no absenteeism, no turnover, and no lost time accidents. That's 6 years and 9 million pounds of electronics we've recycled. It proved to us that the unemployment rate in their midst is not the result of their disability, it's the result of a lack of opportunity. The reason we exist is to, as I mentioned, is to create jobs for people with disabilities, and about half of our workforce does what's called production work, and our production work is demanufacturing computers down to their base materials, and then doing what's called an intake on computers. So either way, a computer, when it comes in, it's going to leave here in parts and be recycled, or it's going to be refurbished and it's going to be sold at PCs for people.
The disabled team that is working behind us, doing the disassembly and reassembly work for Blue Star, are some amazingly talented individuals. We want to integrate some of those same folks in because they've got some outstanding computer skills, and we think this could be an open-ended job line for them. It can introduce them to a whole world of work that I think they'll enjoy. They're a very talented bunch, sometimes a dry sense of humor.
Yeah, and I got my picture taken.
How do you like having your picture out here?
Well, it's good.
It's certainly changed my perception of what I used to think was a traditional work environment.
I like working here. I would say I'm a pretty outgoing person. We used to have I don't know if we still have it up there, but yeah, there's a thing up there that says like dream big, get stuff done, and know how to have fun. I think that's kind of me. I'm kind of like I more have fun than anything else. But I'm a little mix of both, all of them. So.
The metaphor for what we do at Blue Star, if you take away the details of the mission and everything, really comes down to two essential elements. It's unwanted junk, unwanted people, and you put them together, and we've been able to create something really special.
I do feel like I belong to the blind community because I don't see it as just like a black and white kind of thing. There are tons of people out there that have visual disabilities on all areas of the spectrum. And as a person with a disability, it's really important to find those people who really and truly understand what you go through, and it's really nice to have that kind of community. People always say like, oh, did you forget your glasses today? And I just, there's been times where there's days where I just don't want to deal with it, and I just say like, oh yeah, I forgot my glasses today, and then there's other times where I'm really in a like I wanna educate you about this, and I say, no, actually I have a visual disability, and like I have a hard time seeing like print like this.
On one hand, you want to equip people with the facts so they can share that. On the other hand, you don't want to have to go through life just always having to do that.
I've had people say like, like, wow, oh, like you must not be able to drive. Like that must be really inconvenient. And I'm like, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Or one time I was doing a training, a mobility training with my cane, and I accidentally kind of brushed this guy's arm when I was reaching for the button at the crosswalk, and he was like, when we were crossing, he asked me like, so like, does that happen to you a lot? Like, do you like accidentally touch people? I'm like, well, do you ever accidentally touch people? Like, yeah, like it happens, like, sorry.
We were challenged with coming up with a mechanism for addressing issues related to bias and how would somebody become a good bystander? What are those principles so that everybody can aspire to also live and behave that way? So that's what the principles of community are. And they're simply statements that reflect who we believe this institution is and should be. Inclusion. We create and nurture inclusive environments and welcome, value, and affirm all members of our community, including their various identities, skills, ideas, talents, and contributions.
How do you normalize the experience of every student while keeping in mind that students come with both visible and invisible disabilities?
It's no longer enough to welcome somebody into your community. The things that we do, the little things we do, can really make a difference for students to feel that they are included, right? So a student who is trying to navigate around campus, if they can't navigate, then they know that we don't really value what their issues are, what their needs are.
You know, with any of the isms, it's really discriminating against somebody based on something that they have absolutely no control over.
I really believe that it comes down to just being a person, like a human to other humans.
You know, it's not okay for people to not take the time to understand people with disabilities because they're a huge part of the population, and they deserve the respect, and they deserve for, you know, for able people in society to take the time to learn about it.
So we just need to enlighten them. Yeah.
What does normal mean?
I don't know.
That's a tough question.
That's a really hard question to answer.
Really? You're trying to define normal?
I don't know.
I have difficulty with this.
Normal is being who you are, being who you want to be. Whatever makes you smile, whatever brings love into your heart, that's normal.
If it's not getting in your way of being happy, and if it's not getting in other people's way of pursuing their happiness, then I guess that's normal.
Being happy in your own skin and loving yourself and feeling like you feel empowered with whatever you do.
It's all up to us.
I think it's, for me, I think it's a misconception.
It's not a pigeonhole we can put somebody in.
There is no such thing as normal, maybe, but it's just a different normal.
I think redefining normal really comes from changing our mental model, so our mental idea and picture of what we think something should be.
Because there is no normal, right? I mean, we are all bringing something different to the table.
Normal is undefinable.